This video is going to help you complete your homework for this week by explaining to you how add product works. If you can understand how add product works, you're going to be able to add a category very easily. Well, maybe not very easily, but pretty easily. So let's make sure we can get in and actually add a product. This is stuff that's supposed to work. So let's make sure we get rid of this database error. If you see that, just remember you have to change database.php. Put in your database name, password, and username. You can see information in the last module if you need help with that. But we get that fixed, and we are able to get into index, and we're able to get into add product. All right, we can see that the add product form page has a drop-down box, and it's got 3 inputs. Let's see if we can actually get this to insert by putting in some data, and we see we get another error. All right, we try to use a band function, and the band function is listed there. It's called exec, and the file name is listed there, add product PHP. So we're going to go into add product.php, and we're going to get rid of the exec query as it's listed in your instructions, and put the word query there instead. Okay, now we're going to save this, go back, hit the back button, and hit the add product button again, and there we go. We did successfully add a product, and it's showing up in our web page, and it's also going to be in our database now, which is very cool. All right, so your goal is to do the same thing for adding a category. Let's take a closer look at how add product and add product form work. All right, this is another PHP page. We're requiring the database.php, and then there's just a plain SQL statement. Right? This project is going to combine your assignment from the first week that dealt with posts with your assignment from the next week that dealt with SQL statements, and now we're doing them together. So just spend some time looking through this code, trying to figure out as much as you can about it, and figure out what code corresponds to what on the web page. All right, one of the important things to look at is the form action. All right, this tells the page where to go after the user hits that button and what to do with the information from this form. It's going to post it to the addproduct.php. All right, so you might want to review that if you need to, but I'll go over it again. But the way it works is we're going to have these variables or these names in this file, and they're going to be sent to that other file. This is some code that's going to mix PHP with the HTML for the form. It's really a little bit of a complicated piece of code that you don't have to completely understand, but I'd like to take a shot at it. All right, the option value. The value of what's going to be sent to the other form is the category ID here. But what's actually going to show up in the drop-down list for the user is the category name. All right, and these are going to come from an array, which is being assigned at the top of the page, which is the result of that query that we looked at before. So the categories array is really going to be a representation of the categories table, with the category ID and the category name being subcomponents of each array element. So each array element is going to be referenced by the word category. That could have been anything. But the categories word is with the $sign in front of it is the array name. So here the category is one individual row from the array, and then the category ID and category name are the subcomponents of that array. If you don't completely understand it, it's not that big of a deal because you don't have to use a drop-down box and an array for the add category. So we're not going to have anything like this. You're just going to have something like the label. Right? You're going to have a label. So just figure out how this works. We've got a label and then the word code with a colon. That's going to be what the user sees. The input type is input, and the name is important to pay attention to, because this name has to correspond to the file that's getting posted to. All right, so that code right there corresponds to this part right here. There's our label with our colon, and there's our input box. All right, the next label corresponds to the next one down on that page. So for the add category, all you really need is one of them that is just going to be for the category name. Alright, so let's see what happens when we do this add product.php, when we actually post. Let's take a look at that file. Alright, at the top, we're getting the post information. We're getting the information that was posted. Alright, and again, each word over there corresponds to a word over here. Right? The code here is because there's the word code there. And so that's got to be a matchup one for one. Every piece of information being sent is then being received, and now it's being stored in a variable. All right, these could have been different names, but they chose to use the same name. As long as the variable name corresponds to the code that's used throughout the rest of the file, that's the important thing. So we're just doing some validation to make sure that those variables are not empty. Notice that category ID is not being validated. And the reason for that is that you have to choose one of those categories. So there's no way category ID could be empty. If any of them are empty, you'll get an error page. If they're not empty, you're going to insert into products. Right, the word products is there because that is the name of the table in the database. Right, that has to match exactly, products. Right, in the parentheses under that line are the field names. Those have to match exactly as well. It says category ID here because it says category ID right here. All right, next to that is product code, and that's why we have product code. Those have to match exactly. The field names to the line that's underneath the insert in the query that's being built. All right, that's just a string query. But notice we are adding 4 things here, and the values that we're adding correspond to the 4 variables that we got at the top of the page. So those have to match up exactly. And you'll be able to compare the syntax for your assignment by looking at this syntax here. Now, the table for products actually had 5 fields. Right? It had a product ID as well. But our PHP is not sending a product ID. But you can see with my test one, it actually does have a product ID. Why is that? Because product ID is set to auto increment. We don't have to pass anything to it. It's just going to take care of it itself. And it's going to be the same way with category ID. So hopefully you understand that, and you'll be able to complete the category assignment pretty smoothly.